One thing that I find really interesting, and I wonder if you've noticed it yourself, is that the right information comes right on time. It's never late, right? And I think this is something we can find a bit of peace in and trust and have faith that these things happen, right? When you haven't got the answers or you're not ready for a certain understanding, there's no problem. The time will come when you're meant to understand it, when you're meant to receive it, right on time, and you'll be ready for it when it comes. And I have a lot of faith in this, and I also think it's part of staying in the flow, right? Of understanding that maybe I don't have all the answers that I'm looking for right now, or maybe certain things I don't quite understand, I don't quite get, I don't seem to receive them how I want to receive them, or things just aren't landing in a certain topic, in a certain field for you, at a certain time, at a certain place. But have some faith in knowing that if you're meant to know it when you're meant to know it, you'll know it and it will come to you. And this can happen in many different ways, right? It can come through people, relationships, certain lessons and everything else. But this certainly plays out for me, and it's been something that I've noticed time and time again. And quite recently as well, I had an example of this, which is why it's on my mind, and something that come up that I thought I'd talk about. A couple of years ago, I was reading a few books, right, of a certain author, and I loved the first one, I loved the second one, and I bought the third one. And I was reading the book, and I found myself just reading the words, right, but the story itself wasn't landing. And I kept having this moment in the first half of the book of just feeling like, I'm reading these words, yet I'm not really quite following the message. I'm not even really quite following the story, just even on the surface level. I'm not really getting and managing to keep up with it. So I ended up putting the book down, and I never returned to it. Now, it's crazy times we're living in at the moment, right? And I heard quite a lot of people recently say about they're having sometimes sleepless nights, and other times they're sleeping for hours and hours and hours, right? And I've had a couple of nights this myself, and the other night, maybe a few nights ago, I was laying wide awake, right? And in these moments I always trust that I'm meant to be awake for a certain reason, right? There's no pressure. I'll do everything I can to drift off to sleep, but I'm not going to force it either, right? Maybe I'm going to have some thoughts, some ideas and everything else that's worth lying awake for. I kind of trust this and stay in that mindset with it rather than getting frustrated, right? Because as soon as you start getting frustrated, that's even harder to then fall asleep, right? Just keeping the mind in the right place and understanding that, look, I'm laying wide awake right now, but maybe it's for a reason. And as I said, lots of ideas seem to come for me at this time anyway, so when I'm having those nights, I tune into that and allow that to be, and most of the time I end up getting up and writing some notes down and everything else that I feel like maybe certain parts of me that I needed to come through at that point, right, in those hours. It's a very sacred hour, right, in late at night or early morning. So it was one of those nights. And rather than reading the book that I was reading before I went to bed, I was in the mood for something different, right? And because I couldn't sleep, I decided it's time to read. It's a good time to take, right? And get the mind relaxed and switch off the mind, get into a story. So I looked up on the shelf. There was about 40 books there, most of them that I've read, some of them that I haven't. And this one book stood out, the one that I'd read or tried to read a couple of years prior, and never felt like it was connecting with me, right? I wasn't quite understanding, which is quite a strange thing to have, right, when you're reading the words but not following the story or definitely not the message, the underlying message. So I decided to pick up that book and I started reading it, and instantly I could not believe how I was interpreting the book on such a different level to where I was at before, right? I went from feeling like a couple of years ago I wasn't even managing to follow the story, yet picking it up the other night, late at night, not only was I following the story and I was gripped by the story, I was managing to sort of read between the lines, and it all kind of made sense more. I thought, this is not just a story, right? There's these messages throughout, and sometimes it was just one-liners, right? The whole story itself was very much like this, you know. It was kind of like there was the surface level story, but then there was also the deeper understanding if you actually read into the words and the essence of the words, the lessons in the words that were playing out for the character in the book, and that was all landing for me. And it just went to show that it was another one of those examples, right, that I clearly was not ready to and had to have the understanding, the consciousness to receive that message a couple of years ago. So what's fascinating is whatever chapter I've been through in that couple of years, whatever scenarios I found myself in, conversations that I've had, growth that I've had, topics that I've dived into, things that have played out in my life, just within that short chapter of a year and a half, 2 years, has made me ready to receive that message in that book. And I was laying there, and it wasn't just that I was receiving it, I was like, this is right on track for me right now. This is exactly what I need to be reading. And the story itself, but also the message, the underlying message, the lessons throughout the book that were bang on track. And certain characters in it were playing out certain things that I've had conversations about recently. It was right on point, and it kind of blew my mind a bit, you know, how I could go from the same author, the same book, the same message, the same understanding, yet I wasn't ready to receive it, versus further down the line it was everything I needed to hear and to read and to understand. And I couldn't wait to pick the book back up again and continue the story, right? It's the right time. Now is the right time for me to be receiving that message. And this plays out in many different ways, not just books, right? But it just goes to show that we will get the right message, we will get the right information when we need it, when we're ready for it, when we're ready to digest it. And certain topics, certain things we aren't ready to take in, right? On the deeper level, maybe you can get the surface level stuff and think you understand it, but there's all these messages and lessons throughout life that we miss and not take in the right way, right? And then another chapter of your life, you just soak it up, and it's right on cue. And that really did blow my mind. Even some of the characters' names and what they were linked to and everything else really was like right on point. So we need to trust this, right? Trust that the right information will come to you at the right time, and it might play out through people, books, information, finding certain videos, meeting a certain character that shows you something that before you weren't ready to tackle, but now you are. It might not even be that you're ready to tackle it. It's just that understanding, that being at a place where you've maybe had enough life experience to take in that message, or you've had certain challenges since that now you're ready to understand and learn those lessons. Or it's fascinating, it's nice, and I think part of staying in the flow, right, not to force things, but be open to receiving the right messages when you're ready to receive them, and not try and control that too much, or get confused by it when the message is not landing. Of course, we don't know what we don't know, and I think that makes it more exciting when you do feel like things are landing and it's right on time, right? It's one of those synchronicities, and picking up this book for me this week was another one of those. I felt like, this is why I'm sitting here or lying here wide awake right now, and I'm pleased that I dived to that book, considering that a couple of years before I'd actually put it down for it not being a success for me reading it. So just goes to show, right, even that action of me out of those 40 books choosing to go at that late hour for one that previously I never understood and never followed is a bit of a strange act to do, right? You think I'd have picked something, you think my consciousness would have picked something that I knew was going to be an easy read. But it didn't. It went for the message that I needed to receive that time, and I'm grateful that it did. And I trust that is somewhat guided. Something in our consciousness that directs us towards that because we're ready to read or learn or hear a certain message, a certain information. And I find that fascinating. So bear this in mind, right? The information's never too late. It's right on time, and we're guided to that information, those lessons that we're all here to learn individually at the right times. And never force it if it's not landing, right? Because the time will come, if you're meant to know that message, that lesson, that information, time will come where it's a perfect scenario and you're in the perfect state and have had the right experiences and gone through the right chapters in your life to then receive that message and receive that understanding, and get the codes that you need to get as part of your leveling up. I love that. Take care.